Hey everyone, it's Kathy from Paintbrush Bouquet, and I want to thank you for joining me today for part 3 of our doodle flowers. And so, in part 1, we learned how to create these super cute little doodle flowers and foliage and birdhouses using paper and watercolor. You could also use crayon or colored pencils. So make sure you check out that video and see how we created these. In part 2, we took some of our creations and we turned them into a greeting card. Had some fun with watercolor. You could again use markers, or you could use colored pencil or crayon to create these, but it gave them a dimensional look in our greeting card. And today we are ready for part 3. We are going to create a piece of art using our little cut pieces of doodle creations that we have created using flowers and birdhouses and foliage. So I hope you're excited to join me for this fun and simple tutorial. And let's go ahead and get started. So this is the first one I had created. This is on an 8x8 square canvas, as you can see. And I put some Mod Podge over the top of this, and it helped not only attach them, but it gives it a nice little shine. I put mine in a little teacup. This part I cut out of scrapbook paper, and then of course all of the little designs that I had made. I used basic acrylic paint to paint my background. So let's go over our supplies right quick. And I'm going to use this idea, but I'm going to create a different design today because I don't want you to be limited to exactly what I create. I want you to use your imagination. So I'm going to put this aside. Okay, so I'm going to use some scrapbook paper that I have to create, and I'm going to do a vase today. I'm going to create a simple vase today using this scrapbook paper. If you do not have scrapbook paper at home, you can create your own vase on a piece of colored paper, or you could just paint a vase on your canvas, or you can even make it without a vase at all and just attach these to your canvas. We are going to use a canvas. I used an 8x8 flat canvas on this one. Today I'm going to create a shelf sitter. So this is a 6x6 shelf sitter. It's about 1.5 inches thick. And I thought that would be a really cute little thing to put either on my desk at work or on a shelf in the house. So I'm using a shelf sitter. Any canvas will do. You can even use canvas boards if you're not sure what a canvas board is. That is what these are. You can buy these in multi-packs at Walmart, Hobby Lobby, any crafts, any place that sells crafts. This is an 8x8. This is a 8x12. So these are great too, and you get more of them in a pack for less money. So you could also create it right on that. We're going to need some acrylic paint. Today I am going to be using a muted color. I'm using khaki tan and some white. You could use any color that you want, but these are the two that I have chosen for my background. And then I'm going to make, what I like to do on shelf sitters is make some fun striping on the side. So I have grabbed one called Mystic Teal to make the fun striping on the side. So these are just basic craft paints. Use what you have if you have them. Don't run to the store and grab something. Just use whatever colors you have to create what you are wanting. Of course, we're going to need some paint brushes for our design. I'm using this is about a 3/4 inch to an inch. I didn't bring a ruler out with me to put my color on. And then I'm using a smaller paintbrush to add my stripes to the side. I think I might do the bigger stripes. So we're going to see when we get to that point. And then if I want to add any extra little features, I always like to have a smaller round with me. And of course, we're going to want some paper towel. And I'm also going to be using a pencil to draw the design on my scrapbook paper. So let's jump right in. I'm going to move this out of the way because I need to paint my canvas first so that it has time to dry. So I'll just set that right up there. I'm going to move my flowers all off to the side because I'll choose those later. And I am going to use a styrofoam plate to put my paint in. I did not mention that, but you need something to put your paint in. So I'm going to use a little bit of this tan and a little bit of this white. And I'm going kind of for a marbled look. I don't like to do solid color backgrounds because it's a little bit difficult to get all one solid color. It'll look like you tried to. This one, I know it's a little hard to see in the lighting, but I used white, a little bit of white with a darker blue color. And then I used bubble wrap. How fun is that? And I added some little bit of texture on the background to that one. That's how I created those and I did kind of a lime green color. So that's bubble wrap for texture. All right, so I've got my brush. I do like to wet my brush down and then dry it off really good. That's only to soften up my bristles. And I'm going to dip into the white paint and a little bit of the brown. And I'm going to test it out to see if that's the color that I want. Yep, I like it. So I'm doing mine in all different directions. I'm going to see. It's not going to let me zoom. I'm not real sure what happened to my camera there. Okay. I'm going to add a little more white because it got a little darker than what I wanted in some spots. So it's just paint. So you can add some white. Don't forget to do your sides. If you have sides on your canvas, if you're using canvas board, just wrap it around a little bit to those sides. Oh, does that ever happen to you? My paintbrush just fell apart. Ooh. Now, when you're done, what you want to do is make sure you don't have any chunky bits of paint anywhere that's thick because it'll take longer for that to dry. Make sure you didn't miss any spots. Check those corners. Those are always easy ones to miss. Look at that. I missed an entire little section right there. Okay. Now, once more over that, make sure I don't have any areas that are going to take too long to dry. And there we go. Okay. Wipe my hands off a little bit because I'm ready to start the next part. Okay, now I want to sit this aside and I'm going to sit it right over here. All right. So the next part is I want to draw the vase on my paper. So I need to be careful because I've got wet paint right there. So I recently saw a post where somebody was drawing a vase, and to get the vase the size that they wanted and so that was uniform, they drew a cross. And I want this vase to be a little bit shorter. So they drew a cross like this. And I'm doing this on the back of my paper so that my pencil marks don't show. They drew a cross, and then that gave them a better idea of where the sides were to be to make it symmetrical. So I want mine to be, I think I want a little wider. I want one of those kind of short, squatty vases. So I'm going to make my curve here. I'm going to make my curve here. And I really want this to curve down. I almost got this a little close to the bottom, so it might be a little shorter and squattier than I had planned. And just go ahead and tweak it how you want. I'm going to bring this up a little bit higher. Remember, this is on the back side of your paper, so nobody's going to see that. I kind of want to measure it to my, oh, that's pretty good. And then I'm going to bring my vase down a little bit right here. By curving it down on the at the bottom and on the top, you're giving that vase dimension so that it does not look like just a flat piece of paper. We want to add a little dimension to this. I need to grab some scissors. I did not add that to the list, but we want some scissors to cut this out. And put that paper aside. Got a little white paint on it. That's okay. I'm going to do something else to it in a little bit. You see, that's what happens when you get messy. And I am a messy, messy painter. It just means I like to have fun when I paint. Okay, take a look at the shape. I like that. It's kind of one of those shorter, squattier ones. Like I said, I got a little tiny bit of white right there, but honestly, when I'm done with everything and add a little bit of extra color in there, nobody's going to see that. So there is my vase. Now, while I'm still waiting on that canvas to dry, I'm going to set my paint aside. I'm going to go ahead and choose my flowers that I want to put on here. So I've got a lot of flowers and foliage, and I want to fill this in pretty well. I do really like this little, I do really, really like this little birdhouse. So I think I want to add that. I like to have some foliage in the back. So I'm working from the back forward. So here's a little bit of greenery right there. And let's see, I might put another piece just right over here. Do I want the same kind? Yeah, I think I do. Now I want to add some other color into my little vase. Let's see, I want to add, so this is one of those little, like, I don't know if they're little buds or berries, but I really like to see those in the back of these. So I'm going to add, actually, I think I'm going to go over to the side on this one to separate out those purples just a little bit. Okay. I want to add some color down in the front, but if you look at my flowers, they're all going to be the same height, and I don't want them the same height. So I'm going to chop them off. I'm going to do, as soon as I find what I do with my little scissors. What happens when you're creative people tend to be a little bit, oh, right there, right in front. Okay, creative people are not always the most organized. Okay, so I'm going to chop this one off. I'm going to come down here like this, and I'm going to take this bottom set of leaves right off of here because I want this to be tucked right down here in the front. And do I want another color there? I really, yeah, I kind of do. Let's look at these yellows. If you just wonder what happened to my lighting there, I had a cover on the window and it just came off. So I'm hoping that didn't mess with my lighting too much. Okay, I hope you all can see that. I think that's all I'm going to add for flowers. I've got a lot more over here, but I don't want to overdo it. And in fact, I may have to take some of those out. But there's basically what I want that to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of move these off to this up here to the side. And I've got my vase. And I'm going to take a look at my canvas. And here's my canvas. It's still wet. So I'm going to go ahead and take and blow dry this a little bit. So I got my blow dryer here. And I did want to go ahead. As I'm blow drying this, I'm thinking, you know what? I probably ought to go ahead and put my sides on my canvas since I've got a thicker canvas. I'm going to show you how I do that. So I'm going to grab this teal color that I have, and I'm going to grab a little more white. And I want this to almost be like a dry brush look. So let me tell you what dry brushing is. I've got my smaller paintbrush right here, and I'm going to dip it in my paint, and I'm even going to add a little bit of white, and I'm basically taking most of the paint back out of it, and then I'm going to grab the side of my canvas, and I'm going to add some dry brushed edges onto here, a little more color than that. Now, I did not measure these out. If that bothers you to not have them perfectly even, you can measure these out. I do not always worry about things coming out even. I think that adds to the character of the design. And it's mixing a little bit with my brown in the back. And then I'm going to take a little swipe of white through these. And I know that doesn't look like much, but when it's all finished, that's really a cute little accent on each one. You could even go down the edges like with a gold or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and go around each side. Because I'm dry brushing this part, it will dry very quickly, so it can be drying while I'm working on my flowers. And you can see some of my lines are thicker than others. I'm just doing this in a very loose style of painting, and it kind of goes with my whole style of this whole project. You could do flowers down the side if you wanted to. I've done that before too. But I'm looking for quick, easy, and fun. Okay, there we go. Now, the top of this is make sure that's all dry. It appears to be all dry. Now, the next thing I need is some Mod Podge and an old paintbrush. That was another thing I forgot to add to the list at the beginning. So, Mod Podge and an old paintbrush. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to Mod Podge this on yet. I want to lay my design back in here so that I can make sure it's going to fit the way I want it to. Because I want to make sure that it's not going to go above the edges of the canvas and stick out. Let's see, this one I had over here. And I've got my little yellow flower right there, and I've got my little pink flower right there. Okay. And I'll tuck it down. So I'm going to move this out of my way right now. And I'm going to go ahead and start pulling my layers off one at a time. And I believe I have the purple one behind that foliage. Okay, so I'm going to start with, and the reason I'm pulling them off layers at a time, because I need to adhere these to my canvas. Now I'm going to straighten these out just a little bit. Because they're watercolor, sometimes they get a little curve to them. Be careful that you don't pull on them because you don't want to break them. Okay. I'm going to take Mod Podge and I'm going to just put it down on here. Ooh, that's a lot of it right there. And I'm going to lay this, sit this right on top. And I'm going to do the same thing over there. And this will all be brushed in anyway, so that little extra did not hurt anything. Put this piece down, and I have one more to put down on this background. So we're doing this in layers. I'm going to do the background, middle ground, and then foreground on this so that my Mod Podge has a chance to adhere to all of this. Once you have these laid on there, your fingers are going to get messy. If any of the watercolor comes off onto your fingers, wipe them off on a paper towel so that you don't spread it all over your canvas. The next thing I'm going to do is take Mod Podge and go over the top of each one of these. And it's going to help secure it to the canvas. You may every now and then have to push down on a piece that starts popping up because canvas does have a little bit of a give to it. Sometimes they do pop up just ever so slightly. When you get this whole project done, if you have parts of it that are popping up, just simply take a little bit of glue and glue those pieces back down. Okay, the next thing I want to do are the pieces that are in the second layer of my design. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit to the back of this. Not that much because I still have a lot of that wet Mod Podge down. I don't want to really cover my birdhouse up too terribly much, but I like that little yellow flower to kind of have a little bit over it just because it adds a dimension to what I am creating. And you can see I'm adding this Mod Podge on very thick. It looks like it's white, but I promise you it all dries clear. And then I had this little piece of foliage, and this dries very fast. So if it's drying already, add some more. And then I have this foliage. Oh, that almost overlaps. So I'm going to pull it down a little bit. And then I'm going to Mod Podge over the top of it. Is there anybody else in crafting world that called it most of their life Mod Podge? Yeah. Only until a few years ago did I discover that's not what it was called. So in my mind, this Mod Podge will forever and always be Mod Podge. There, I said it. Okay, I'm going to add a little pink flower right here. I'm going to add a little yellow flower right down here in the front. One more little brush of it all over, make sure I didn't miss any spots. Now, I want to measure, see how this is looking. Oh, that's looking really good. If I would have had these in too far, I could have added some more foliage or anything like that, but I really like how that's fitting on there. So now it's time for my small little vase that's kind of shaped like a bowl, which I think, oh, there's a little, we have a lab and it looked like a little one of her hairs in my stuff. Ew. All right. And then this piece. And there's my vase. Now, you guessed it, right over the top. And this will get a little bit warpy looking. That doesn't bother me a bit. I think it makes it look like it's a texture of the vase. When this is all dry, I will, so that I keep with the consistency of the shine of this Mod Podge, and I am using a matte, but it will still have a slight shine to it. You can use gloss, satin, whatever you have on hand. If you do not have Mod Podge at home, you can use Elmer's glue. When I do that, I add just a tiny bit of water to it, ever so slightly, because as you can see, this is just a little bit runnier than basic Elmer's glue. But don't go to the store and buy this. If you have some glue at home, you can use this as well. So what I'm going to add a little bit of color to my vase. Plus I had that little white spot. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick blow dry on this. Put the lid on my Mod Podge. Mod Podge. And you can see I've got some crinkles. If that bothers you, I actually might pull this yellow flower. Well, it's down. If I had this to do over again, I probably would have pulled that yellow flower up a little bit higher. But that's okay for what I'm doing here. I just now noticed that it was kind of hidden in the bottom of that. So if I was to do this again, I probably would pull that up a little bit. So just make sure your placement is all okay. And I also could have cut my stems off even more, but for the sake of hurrying through this to show you how to do it, I didn't take that time to really pay attention to that part of it. And so my vase is already dry. That's how fast that stuff dries. It is not dry up around my flowers, so I want to make sure I'm giving that some time to dry. Now I like to add a little bit of extra dimension to my vase, so I'm very carefully going over my edges. And so if you see where I got a little bit right there on that, I didn't really want to do that, so I'm taking some water and I'm cleaning that off. And then a little paper towel right there. Okay, that's how easy that is. I'm just adding some dimension, some little bit of darkness to my edges, and I'm fanning it toward the middle. Now this is where I can kind of go over that little tiny white spot there, and it didn't cover it up completely, but I'm not done yet. So I'm just adding, and then I'm going to take my brush and add a little bit of swoops of color going with the curve of the vase. Now I'm going to clean off my brush. And I'm going to add a little bit of white highlights. And I'm dry brushing this to take most of the paint off. And I'm going to concentrate the majority of my highlights in the middle because the light is coming from the front. So the middle should be what is the lightest. And if that white is too bright, I could add a little bit of the teal to that to lighten it up just a little bit. I might even take my fingers and smudge it just a little. And there, that just hit that little mark. So now we've got a few highlights. Take another look, see if there's any other places we want highlights. I could go around this outside edge and add some outlining to it if I would like, which I may end up doing. Is this dry? That actually is dry enough. I did not do this on my first one. Here is the first one that I had made. I did not do that on this one, but I think this might be kind of cute to add to the outside of this one. Make sure you're not putting your hand through any wet paint. And I'm doing it kind of as a sketched outline, so it's not perfect. I think I like that with this particular color and with that particular color background. I do think I like that. Now you got to make sure that you're not going through wet, because I kind of may have hit some wet with that marker. If you do, wipe that marker off as quick as you can. Markers do not like wet paint. Of course, unless it's a paint marker. Add a little bit of lines here and there. Why not? It's a doodled kind of picture. Add some broken lines to the top. Yeah, I think I like that. Make sure if you add lines to yours that you are going with the curve of the vase. Okay, I think I do like the lines in there. I did not do that on my first one. I may add that next. And there you go. And I have my sides decorated. And that's going to look really cute on a shelf. Hey, everybody, I hope you had fun with this. I hope you try some of these projects using these fun little doodled flowers. And if you do, be sure and post it on my Facebook page to show me what you have created. Everybody, thanks for joining me. Have a great day.